And thanks for joining us on this happy Thursday. And as we call it here, our pre-Friday, hoping everybody's having a good start to their morning. And again, thanks for taking time. We always acknowledge and understand how busy all of you are. And so when you can give up time to be with us for a couple of hours, it definitely is meaningful to us. As always, we've got a lot on the agenda. We do have a presentation. CPS will be here this morning. In addition to that, our fiscal team will give you some updates and a couple of other updates from team members. Deb Sapolak is here from Teaching Strategies, and she and I will end the meeting doing a last section on Teaching Strategies goal, but really focusing on outcomes. And so I'm not going to keep us talking this morning because I really want us to get started to try to stay on time so that we can move through and make sure that everyone has the opportunity to do their presentations. And as always, toward the end, we try to leave time for questions, and we'll try to do that today as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Next slide.
Yes, just thanks a lot, Anna. Just a reminder for the new people, if you don't mind me saying, Deputy Commissioner, that to track attendance, please type your name and organization in the chat. And with that, we'll get moving on here.
So again, this slide just basically lets you know what the meeting agenda is. We do have one new staff member that we have not had an opportunity to introduce to our group here. And I'm not sure if she has signed on because I can't see everybody that's on. But Janice Taylor, if you're on, if you can unmute and just say good morning to everyone and what team you're with.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Janice Taylor, and I am the Team A Supervisor.
And we welcome her aboard. She's been here just a little bit of time. I'm sure she's figured out already how busy DFSS is, but again, we welcome her. She is that new supervisor over that team, and she's also our education person as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's go ahead to the next slide.
Good morning, everybody. So this is Tiffany Junkins. I just wanted to talk quickly about the grant utilization tracker. So I'm sure you have already received from our programs team that sits under Victor and Zaraya. We've been sending out emails about tracking expenditures. And so we want to know, our agency is going to be able to spend all of the money that that you have in your awards. It's very important for us that you certify your PFA and your PI grants, just as well as you certify the Head Start and Early Head Start grants through a certification. And we're pretty much just asking, if you're going to spend 100% of your money, tell us you're going to spend 100% and sign, right? If you're not going to spend 100%, if there's any projected salvage, you need to also indicate that and provide a justification as to why there is underspend. So we're asking for everybody's cooperation with submitting those certifications. The teams have sent out the emails. So I'm just asking for your cooperation and making sure those certifications make it back into our office. We will be following up. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to B for program operations updates.
Thank you, Tiffany. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. Just want to give a few brief updates. SGA is the grantee's vendor for mental health services. And I think Betty is joining us today, Betty Diaz. I just wanted to let you know that we are working on several things with SGA. We're working on a staff wellness guide. This is very much needed, especially with the times that we're working in. We want to be able to provide you with additional support, as well as we've asked SGA to do a lineup of wellness, mental health track workshops. These workshops will focus on a variety of things that I know you and your staff are dealing with right now. Challenging behaviors, building a culture of safety, active supervision, nurturing, and empathy. So please look forward to these. They will be posted and have your staff sign up. The last thing that I wanted to mention to you is as we do our data and documentation on trends, we are finding that we get an uptick around this time of the year in incident reporting. So make sure that you're reporting those incidents. And, you know, spring brings about beautiful weather, and there may be a direct correlation here. So I just wanted to get it back on your radar and to make sure that you send those in. Lastly, April is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. So I wanted to make sure that you also know that, and to maybe do some activities with your staff around that. So now I'm going to turn it over to Seth to talk about closeout.
Thanks, B. So as we know, Department of Family and Support Services is required by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services to track transition of all children enrolled in its Head Start and Early Head Start programs. This process is being done to ensure the next educational placement of all of our Head Start and Early Head Start Chicago children are placed. Therefore, each Head Start and EHS agency is required to complete the 2021 Child Transition Tracker for each of its directly owned sites and partner sites. This tracker was emailed out to you from our team leads. It has to be completed and turned back into your respective team lead by April 30th, 2021. So I'm doing my dots in inverse order. Inventory. I just wanted to say thank you. I know I've talked to maybe all 43, maybe, or close to, of our Head Start, Early Head Start grant agencies. I just want to say thank you for uploading and capturing your information in COPA. As of right now, 100% of our agencies who have purchased or said they've purchased with Head Start, Early Head Start funds from that grant have uploaded information into COPA. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. That's our inventory update.
Thanks.
All right, then I am going to jump on in. Hello, everyone. Happy Friday evening. As our deputy has stated, so excited to announce that DFSS is partnering with BCDI Chicago for their Nurturing the Provider Conference. And that's going to be April 27th through the 29th from 12 to 2 p.m. So if anyone is unfamiliar with BCDI, that's the Black Child Development Institute. We often sponsor conferences for the national organization. This is for the local organization, which focuses on children of Chicago. We're going to be sponsoring 300 seats to their conference, and it is on a first come, first serve basis, okay? So the conference will provide insight and information on mental health and social emotional well-being with workshops on trauma-informed training. So you're going to get some insight and information from West Austin P3 Network, also Teach for Teachers, and Dr. Stanley Howard. But here's why we're really excited. Along with this conference, every registrant to the conference will get an annual membership to their organization. So you'll get to take part in all of their conferences nationally and locally. You'll also get certain networks, access to certain networks. So I just want to encourage you guys to all reach out to William Hill, okay, at William Hill at cityofchicago.org. I am putting that into the chat box right now to express your interest. Again, we only have 300 spots and it is first come, first served. So reach out to William Hill and he will take down your information and we'll pass it along to the organization. So thank you guys so much.
Hi, Latasha. I'll also see that Christina Vera did put the link um, to the chat as well. So it's in the chat for everyone. Just want you to know that you do have that available to you. Thanks, Latasha.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Christina. Always on top of it.
All right, so we're going to quickly just talk about enrollment updates. And so this information was good as of April the 12th. So across the board, you could see that we are under enrolled with all of our programs. We did break out again, home-based versus center-based when it comes to prevention initiatives. So you can see how well our home-based model is doing in comparison. But we're under enrolled across all of our programs. And so, you know, with that being said, I just want people to understand that we are working on our 2021 marketing campaign to, to boost enrollment. April 21st, we will be opening, the application will launch. And so those applications will be available to parents. And we have a goal during our early bird period of 12,000 applications across the city of Chicago. So that's between Chicago Public Schools and also community-based organizations. So we're really excited about the application launching on the 21st and to boost enrollment. Next slide. We're going to go ahead and pass it over to our finance team, Glenn Lazan.
Thank you, Tiffany. Okay, so we will advance to our next slide now. Okay, so at the last meeting, Tiffany walked through the current expenditure rates on all of our grants. So here's where we are right now. And again, emphasizing how important it is that our agencies submit their invoices and are invoicing timely, because as you all know, it affects future spending, it affects your cash flow, and all of those above circumstances. So walking through each of these for a Head Start grant for the period that began in December and will be the 7-month period through June for Head Start and Early Head Start, we're presently at 24% for Head Start and currently at 23% for our Early Head Start grants. So given where we're at chronologically within the end of this budget period, which is not far away, it's around the corner, emphasizing again to everyone, please do submit your invoices as soon as possible and timely, because we still have a way to go on these budgets. For the partnership for the period December through November, and that is also on the 12-month period as normal partnership, as well as the EHS expansion grant, we're running at about a 15% and a 14% expenditure rate against the total budget. So again, there's a lot of room still there for our agencies to voucher. So again, emphasizing, please do that. Reach out to the programs team and the finance team as you do, because I see those emails myself also too. And please reach out to us with any technical issues, problems, or just questions on invoicing that we can troubleshoot for you and move this along. For the early childhood block grant for preschool for all and prevention initiative for our children, the period July through June of 2021, we're at a 48% rate. So while that's good, again, we're saying, June is a couple months away. So by the time June is vouchered in the month succeeding as we go through July, still a ways to go on that also too. But please do continue to do so. Reach out to us. For our child care grants, for child care services, we're at about 17% rate of our total funded budget from the state of 21 million. So Selena in our finance team works extensively with all of our agencies, with the CSD programs team, and as well as the enrollment side of things, led by Margaret Jordan of the DFSS team, to make sure that all agencies can appropriately bill for all their children that are eligible, and it's very important. So that also is a daily process as we know, so keeping that flowing. But as we can see overall, as Tiffany expressed so eloquently at last month's meeting, please do voucher on your grants, get it billed, get it invoiced. Those dollars are there, they are awaiting to be spent, and reach out to us with any problems that that you may be encountering. Tiffany, did you want to add any thoughts at all from the program side of things?
No, I think you pretty much hit the mark. You know, I know you guys see our ECDG expenditures, that's PFA and PI. And so again, we're going to be urging you as well to make sure that you're submitting. That particular period of performance is ending soon as well. It's in June. And so it kind of goes back to my comment about the grant utilization. We want you to spend your dollars. If you're not going to expend your dollars, we need to know as soon as possible. And so the teams will be reaching out to you to obtain those certification. That way we understand what the true salvage dollars will be. Thank you.
Thank you, Tiffany. We'll move on to the next slide, and then I see a couple questions. We can address those right after we go through the next ones, if there's anything out there. I think some of these slides will address a couple questions I've seen on the chat. So right now, the 1.22% cost of living increase, the COLA budget, is being submitted today. The application package was due to DFSS on April 2nd. Board and Policy Council approvals were due the following week on April 9th. And DFSS submitted the COLA application. That's a to be happening. So that'll happen today, later on. The teams have been working with our agency regarding any approval issues, be it from a timeliness standpoint, be it to any type of question that was out there regarding the approvals, because as we emphasized through our application package and through emails that Tiffany had sent out to everyone this week, we need to submit the approvals with our application. It's imperative that we do. That's a requirement from HHS, and that our approval hinges upon that too. So Tiffany, did you want to share any thought on that one also too, as you communicated so well on an email a couple of days ago?
Yeah, I just think that, you know, we're in crunch time. So as Glenn said, we're getting ready to submit this information in HSES. So if I'm reaching out to you guys or one of the team members are reaching out to you, it really is imperative. It's urgent. If you've sent the information, I just want to say thank you for sending the information. If I'm bugging you again, I want to apologize in advance. But I'm asking for you to be very responsive to any last minute phone calls or emails, because we need to submit the grant today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tiffany. And moving on, Head Start, Early Head Start, June 30th, 2021 closeout. Delegate agencies should be analyzing their available grant budget balances and anticipated expenditures to determine if a budget revision is needed. This ties into our prior slide about the expenditure rate and the comments that I made there too. So know that finance and programs are there for you to work with you on those changes that may be necessary so that you can voucher against your total budget. Please do so and reach out to us. If the revision is needed, please provide the revision to us as soon as possible. And those specifics were communicated in an email sent back on March 12th. If anyone needs to see that again, just please let us know and we can forward that to you if maybe you don't have it readily available for yourselves. For the June 30, 2021 budget periods for those grants, final budget revisions are going to be due to DFSS no later than May 14th of 2021, and final vouchers to be submitted no later than July 30th of 2021. Recognizing the fact that, as you know, we work with many of our delegate agencies, and we want to make sure that everyone has their voucher submitted, as well as any changes that need to happen too for budget revisions, and everyone competes for that work and that dialogue and to process those changes at once. But many hands touch those revisions, and both from the DFSS internal side of things through the City of Chicago's Controller's Office and their respective approvals. So there's a lot of things that happen just in order to get a budget revision process. So please keep an eye on those dates and please reach out to us so that we can process them, get you in the queue if changes need to be made, and then that we can move forward to help you and to move along and voucher against your budget. Next slide, please. Tom, if you're there. Okay, thank you. Voucher submission and processing. Again, just repeating something that we've echoed in prior meetings, but consistent and timely voucher is required in order to avoid reallocation of your funds. Agencies should voucher at least monthly and no later than the 15th of each month. And final vouchers for grants ending 6/30/21 will be accepted through 7/30/2021. So again, we just emphasizing things that I've said a little bit earlier and a couple slides earlier. Again, we want to make sure that you maximize your grants. Some agencies do voucher on a per payroll basis and submit those to us. They're reviewed and processed. So timeliness is important, but please just do keep that in mind as the time is elapsing right now. We move forward. Also, on a separate subject, along with the COLA grant award that we had rolled out, is the wage and fringe comparability study. So we're in the process of conducting a wage and fringe comparability study. And the study was to be completed and returned to DFSS no later than April 2nd. So that was going on about a couple weeks ago. If you haven't submitted your study, please do so immediately because we're in the process of reviewing them and compiling the results of them that we will share with our agencies as well as with our nearby other Head Start grantees in the immediate area surrounding the Chicago area. So we want to make sure that we can get this timely data out to you as it ties in with all the work you've done on the COLA as well as your awarding of the increases to your team, to your staff. I think that's it. Tom, I think the next slide goes into other topics at this point, right? So I saw a couple questions. One addressed the budget due dates, so I think we addressed that already. Tiffany or Sarethel, do we want to save questions for the end and then move forward with this, or how should we proceed?
If there are any specific fiscal right now, we can try to answer one or two of them, but we do want to move on as quickly as we can.
Okay, maybe I don't see any offhand, but let's see.
The only one I see, and I think it's revisions when they need to be submitted. It's a question that's in the chat box.
Right.
And that's it.
We did address that one, and then Raniel, hi to Raniel, says, will COLA funds be released to the agencies in time for the final budget revision? We're not sure how soon that we are going to get the COLA award notifications. And again, given the timeliness of the Head Start and early Head Start grants, June 30 year end right around the corner, I don't have further insight as to when we can expect approval on our COLA award submissions right now. Normally, it does take a while for them to be reviewed and then finally reviewed, and they reach out to us with questions and needs for further information that we have to reach out to our agencies on. So there is a bit of a process involved there. So I would say that ultimately those are going to need to get incorporated into your final revisions for Head Start and early Head Start so you can voucher those dollars. So I can't speak to the timeline right now, Raniel. We'll let you know as soon as we can on that. Okay, I think that's it on finance questions offhand that I can see that haven't been addressed.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Oh, you're welcome. And as far as COLA, as Glenn said earlier, we need to, that is due today, the 15th. I know staff are, frantically trying to get everything they can from delegates. If there's anything outstanding from your agency, I know you're here today, but if you can definitely communicate with your staff that we need whatever that documentation is that's outstanding submitted right now, because we do have to package and upload all of this into the federal Head Start enterprise system, which is a huge undertaking for staff because of the number of delegates that we're submitting documentation for. So again, please, everyone, make sure that your documentation is in and complete so that we can submit on your behalf. Thank you. All righty, learning agenda. One of the things that I've talked about before in the last meeting that we were going to talk about and start doing what we call a learning agenda. In the learning agenda, one of the things that we want to do is we want to go ahead and just really dive into a topic and give you an opportunity to start really thinking about how this impacts what's going on within your organization, and also how that aligns to the goals and outcomes that have been set up here at the grantee or at DFSS. Because we do want to make sure that things are aligning. We want to make sure also that we're supporting you. And so really when we go into learning agenda, gives us an opportunity to talk, to consider, to think about what all it means to make sure that we're gaining and getting the outcomes. But really all of this, as you all know, is centered around children. It's around the child. It's around the child learning, growing, and developing. And also that child, regardless of what age he or she starts with you at 6 weeks and moves forward, if they stay with you till they transition off to kindergarten, what impact have we had over time in their growth, development, and their learning? And are they kindergarten ready when they make that transition, which is the ultimate goal for our work across our 0 to 3 and our 3 to 5. So let's go ahead and dive into some of the slides. And so the purpose of the learning agenda really is to have collaborative discussions. And in this medium, it's really difficult, but we're going to work out a couple of things. I've got Deb Zapalik with me today, and we're going to do a little bit of collaborative so that we're not just talking heads at you and getting you to respond to some questions. But again, it's to look at it and think about goals, but think about outcomes. Thinking about the data. What is the specific data points that we need to be looking at when we're talking about outcomes, when we're talking about tracking, and when we're talking about planning? What should we be looking at here at our office, but also what should you be looking at there at your delegate sites and your partner sites as you're looking and thinking forward, and you're looking to see as we're coming up to the end of a program year, and this year has gone really, really quickly. But when we think about it, we're going to get down to June very quickly, which will be ending a second program year within a pandemic. And who knew that we'd be doing this, but we are. But again, we still should be tracking. We still should be planning. And just one piece of information that I just want to plug and put in everybody's ear. The Office of Head Start is looking for a full reopening in September of 2021. And so if they're planning for a full reopening, know that we're planning for a full reopening, which means you should be planning for a full reopening. We're hoping that now that we've got vaccinations and other things changing in our communities, yes, I do know there's vaccine hesitancy. And yes, I do know that there's all these variants and different things that are happening in community, but we still also need to be planning forward. So as we're talking today, I want you to be thinking about some of that as well. We want to have opportunities for cross-agency discussions and shared lessons. At the end of the day, some of you have been doing this longer than others. Some of you have been using data in different ways. But again, the great opportunity we have here is we have large, small, medium, those who have block grant, those who have state funding, all the way across federal dollars, who are doing things within your organizations and getting some great outcomes. Great opportunity is when you're able to talk to each other and talk about some of the things that you're doing. The opportunity to align to our goals. As I started off, we set goals you applied for, were successfully awarded through that RFP. There's some goals in there, people. There's some things that we said we wanted to have done within the 5 years that we had the Head Start grant. Yes, we're in recompetition, but we're still tracking forward to obtaining and moving forward with our outcomes. So I'm going to go ahead and get into some slides, and then we're going to do some talking and moving and make sure that we start thinking a little bit more globally about goals, outcomes, and tracking data. Next slide. So a couple of things I just want to remind people, when we're thinking about child outcomes, we're not just talking about teaching strategies goal. There's a lot of other things that you're doing every day in your sites, and there's a lot of other data sets and data points that we all need to be looking at. Class, for example, when a class assessor comes in, I know that's a point in time, but that's still information about what was observed in that classroom. Is there a negative or a positive environment? What's going on? Are, instructional supports, are those instructional supports happening? And we know the class observations is one that's been done for years, and we'll be doing them, and we're working now to get them started again in your classrooms. But that's data, that's information to help us think about what's happening with that teacher in that classroom, with those groups of children and individual children in your classroom. ITERs, ECHRs, or PASS. Again, another data set, another data opportunity, another way to look at and think about the environment. What is going on in the environment? When you're thinking about children's learning, does the environment affect it? Absolutely. And we've got to be thinking across all of that as well. Your enrollment and attendance, does that impact? Absolutely. If you've got chronic absences with children, it's going to impact their outcomes because they're not going to be able to pick up on everything that your teachers are trying to do and program. And what kinds of things are you doing to support that child? For example, if a child has a health issue and that child is not able to be consistent in the classroom, are we making a homeschool connection? Are we making sure that we're sending things home? What kinds of things are we doing? And we need to be thinking forward and planning our work around thinking about some of those things. Teacher turnover rates. If teachers are coming in, but teachers are leaving, it's impacting your children. We know relationship has a lot to do in early learning. We understand that when there's teacher turnover or when you're moving children between groups, just like we talk about learning loss between a summer and a fall for a child, that's learning loss in that classroom for early learning when we have interactions that are changing and relationships that are being broken between teachers, those trusted adults, when you're losing teachers. So we know that there's some impact there as well. Your assessment data, yes, teaching strategies goal, yes, tells you over time, and it is a tool that allows you, if you're doing 0 to 5, to see a child from coming into your program in your birth to 3, all the way through if that child stays with you until that child leaves and transitions off to kindergarten. You should be looking across the board, not just as one set in one instance, but thinking about the growth and development, because that goes back to some of the things I've talked about earlier. How has that child been doing over the time that he or she has been with you is the kind of information you need to be pulling, thinking about, planning, and talking about within your programs and with your staff. Teaching strategies gold, of course, it's there. It links directly to your curriculum, the creative curriculum. And one of the things we did this summer, we put creative curriculum in the cloud for you. We recognize that you guys were all out. We were too here. And how do you access that information? We know those teachers weren't taking those huge boxes and those huge books home with them. So we wanted to make this still fluid for them. So we put it up on the cloud. We wanted to make sure that they could still access it. The other thing that we did over the summer is we did a lot of training as well. And we're still doing training because we recognize that professional development is key, and it is not a one and done. It is over time. Training in an instant is not going to get you where you're trying to go. It takes teams working together, your ed coordinators, your other staff within your organization working with your teaching teams to make sure that they're able to take in, absorb, and use what they're learning through the various professional development and training opportunities. The last one I put down here is and, because there's a lot of other data you're collecting, a lot of other data that we're collecting as well. And so all of those ands go into it. When we're looking in the HR side, we're looking at credentials. We're looking to see whether or not your teachers have enrolled in programs. We've got a scholarship out there. Everybody knows we still have a scholarship out there, right? We're still paying for teachers to go back and advance their credentials and their degrees in the field of early learning. And we're now pulling data sets. We're working with Truman College and that group that's working on this to see exactly what's been the impact over the years that we've had it. Because I'm telling you, when we're sitting down and we're talking about these dollars, we've got to show impact. We've got to be able to say, for example, in this particular area, when it comes to scholarship, that people enrolled in programs, accessed the scholarship, got the scholarship, finished their program, finished their credentials and their degrees. Then we can sit down back at the table and say, can we continue to offer scholarship in Chicago? I will say thank you to all of you who have teachers and staff enrolled in those programs and in those universities and taking it, because that is exactly what we want to do. We are very interested, invested here at DFSS, Mayor's Office and CPS as well, in growing the field. So thanks for working with us, but understand that's a whole nother data set. How many of your teachers are actually enrolled? How many of them are following through and understanding the importance of getting those credentials through the gateway system? That's another one of your data sets. And so when you're thinking about your organization, I want you to think about the same kind of data that we're constantly pulling and looking at here, because that's a way for you to globally think about what's happening in your organization that impacts your child's outcomes. Again, it's the full picture. It's not just one piece. It's only going to tell you a portion of it. And we want you to start thinking much more globally. We want your ed teachers and your ed coordinators or whomever, and titles are all over the place here in Chicago, as they always have been. But those who are working directly with your teachers and working with planning and development and all of those, they need to understand all of these different tools, not just your teaching strategies goal. The other one and the last one I'm going to talk about really quickly is Fidelity. We did a lot of work on Fidelity before. If you've got teachers in the classroom, they're using creative curriculum, are they using it to Fidelity? If they're just using it and not using it to Fidelity, you might not be getting your outcome. So let's connect those dots. Additionally, inter-rater reliability. If they're going into the teaching strategies gold system, they're supposed to be inter-rater reliable. Let me ask you this. If I send a class assessor to your classroom and they had not been reliable, if they had not done their work to ensure their reliability with the class observation tool, how would you feel about them being in your classroom? I know exactly how you feel, because I know what I would do if I were on the other side. I turn them back at the door. I'm saying that to you about inter-rater reliability in gold, because if your teachers are using that tool, they need to be going through that process that is built within that system and making sure that they are inter-rater reliable. And that is not a one and done. It is not something that you do once and you never have to do it again. It ends, it has a deadline date on it, and they need to go back in and do it again. And that should be one of those things that you're watching, monitoring, and ensuring is happening at your organization. That way you have some reliance of what it is they're putting in that system is based on good data, right? We want good data across all of these. So the people who are using these tools have to have the fidelity or to rate reliable or be assessed. They have to have the right tools and equipment in order to do this and to do it well. We need you to manage that on your side as we're managing on ours. Next slide. So in connecting some of the dots from what I just talked about with all of those, and we went over this a while ago, it was a slide that was in the presentation last month. It's here today, and I bolded some points because what I want you to understand is how all of this connects. In resources, as I said, you've got the assessment system. We've got COPA data. We're using the COPA data management system. You're going in and putting in data. I talked about teacher credentials. We're looking at HR, constantly trying to figure out where people are. Then we also are looking at whether or not our family support staff have the credentials that are required. One of the things that we're building into the scholarship, for example, is making sure that that's one of the credentials that's available. We need people to get it. Your home visitors, if you have a home visiting program, need to get that credential, because if not, very soon, they're not going to be eligible to be your home visitors. Just as a quick reminder to everyone. The kinds of activities, I'm just going to go, and I know I talk fast, sorry about that, but I want Deb to be able to get into her piece. This is recorded. You can go back and listen to it. So you'll have all of what we're giving to you today. Continuity of care, again, that relationship model. When we're talking about very young children, if we're changing a child from infant classroom to a toddler classroom to a young 3-room, and they have had 3 interactions with 3 adults, I want you to think about that child has had to stop, try to re-engage, try to get to know another adult while still doing something that's critically important, and that's brain development. That's too many shifts. That's why we're asking for everyone in our 0 to 3 program to be engaged in continuity of care, continuity of relationship, to ensure that we are very mindful and intentional about how we make transitions within our systems. We want to make sure that we have staff support, and we say staff wellness. We have been in a pandemic now for over a year. I feel like in some cases we were in a pandemic before that. It just wasn't about COVID. The reason I say that is because our communities have been impacted by so many different storms, between this critical piece of violence to this critical piece of just deaths in our community to the critical piece of not having enough mental health supports or healthcare facilities in our community. So we were already there. COVID magnified it. We need to make sure that we have staff support and staff wellness programs built in. We're working right now with our mental health provider, SGA, and I know you're going to be getting some information on trainings, because again, we're trying to do everything we can to support you, and we're going to give it to you every chance we get. Last summer, we did trauma-informed care. Our regional office worked with us. We're now working with our mental health provider to engage and do some additional pieces, but you all need to have a staff wellness plan. You need to know what you're offering. Do you have a employee assistance program? What are you doing when a staff really is saying, I'm crying out for help? When you see a staff who's really falling apart and is unable to do what it is they would be able to do normally, what do you do? What's your plan? I want you to think about that. That's what we're thinking about. Need you to think about that as well. HR policies, if you remember back to that RFP, we said we needed pay scale. We need those salaries raised. What we've been able to do over time is increase our rates out to you. And what we're asking for is that you think about embedding this, not just think about, but raise salaries in your programs. Teachers need their salaries raised. One of the things that we know is if mom is sitting in your classroom, she's a mom and she's a teacher, and her phone is going off because her lights are about to get turned off because she just doesn't make enough money to sustain her personal life, it impacts her ability in your classrooms. And so the wages definitely helps sustain that family, gives her the ability to be in your program thinking about what it is you've hired her to do, which is that great care for those children. Some of the outputs, we're looking for the percent of teachers that have achieved credentials. We're going to be looking at that. If we're putting money into it, if we're putting the scholarship out there, we're going to be looking at our numbers and making sure that we can track how many of our teachers have achieved these credentials. We're also going to be working with you to see, are we making that benchmark for salary? We put that in there. We said we needed everybody to be tracking to it. We're going to be looking and benchmarking to see, are people doing it, and are you tracking, and are you going to make it? And if not, these are conversations that will be had here at DFSS with your organization. One of the things I want you to look at, and again, on the other slide, is the teacher turnover. How many of your teachers have stayed with you for at least a year or more? How many are still in your classrooms? How many are still with you? You've dedicated, put money into them. You've trained them, you've worked with them. That's the value add there. Are they still there? And if not, what's happening? Why are you having those kinds of transitions is something you need to be thinking about. And then the percent of family support staff who've achieved their credentials. And again, another one that's in the RFP, we need them to get those credentials. And we also, another one we put in there was reducing that caseload for your family support staff. 100 families on a caseload means I can see you every now and then over a calendar year. You're never going to get the outcomes you need. Family support staff, and what we put in there was about 35 on a caseload, still big, but a little bit more manageable. And we need everybody to be working towards that. I'm just going to go over to outcomes really quickly. And one of the things is improve teacher performance. We're doing work on our end, thinking about the professional development and things that we're doing. We need you to be thinking about that and then letting us know, is there something else we need to do? That's what we're here for, is to support you. The last one over there, that other bullet, long-term, this is what we're all working towards. It's that our children who leave us, when they transition, that they're ready to go to school and they're going to do better in their educational.
Oh, that looks bad. It had rocks and branches and weeds. And so they're flattening it. They're putting.
Please mute. Thank you. And so again, it's making sure that when you look at this document, we built this out. This is a logic model that we're using here at DFSS. It is in here. You'll be able to pull this down off the website, off YouTube. This is being recorded, but I just want you to pay attention to the things that are in here. And as you're thinking about your work on your side, where do you connect with, and your interconnections with us and you and your work at your agencies. And these are the kinds of things we'll be talking about over time when we're talking about learning agenda. Okay, so go to the next slide, please. So again, prior to COVID, we started this discussion, so this isn't new. We're back at it again, and we're going to continue to go down this slope with you, talking about data. Some of the things that we had talked about in the last meeting, and this was one of the agenda items, was for you to start pulling some of your reports, that you as a team started looking at them. And what does the data tell you? I know what it tells me, for example, when I look at kindergarten readiness, that we did have some growth between the fall and the winter, but I will tell you, we got a long way to go with our children between now and those that are leaving for kindergarten. So the plan now is, are your teachers really working, dedicated, committed, thinking about and structurally planning for work in those classrooms for those children that are transitioning? And are those children going to be with you for the summer? We hope. What are you doing over the summer? So when they show up, and again, CPS is opening a little bit earlier this year. So are your children going to be ready by the end of August to transition into into kindergarten? And those are the kinds of things we need you to be thinking about on the ground. But again, I did all of this as a lead into what it is that I've asked Deb Sapollock to go over with you. Because again, what we're talking about is moving into not just looking at one data point and having that data point tell us everything it can about a child, because from the teacher in the classroom to your onboarding, all of those things impact what happens in your classroom and then the outcomes for that child. And what we want to do as we go further and continue to do this is to think about all those varying data sets. Next slide. All right, Deb, ready for you.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Tom, could you turn over the screen sharing so that I can share my slides?
Sorry, yes, let me stop sharing here. Then now you can go into your
Okay,
screen.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, Sarathel and I met last Tuesday to talk about the purpose of today. And what I took away was, how can we make data work for us? What are the systems? What are the procedures we need to be involved in? And it's, as Sarathel has said, it's not just child assessment data. It's not just running reports. It's creating a process and systems so that we're using all data sets to reflect on, how is our program? How are our teachers? How are our children? How are we preparing them to be school ready? Sometimes I know we kind of feel like this when we hear the word data. And one of the things Sarathel and I discussed during that meeting was that analyzing data is twofold. It begins with creating a system for data talks, data dialogue. And that happens at the classroom level, at the site level, and the program level. And what I mean by this is that teachers have dialogue about the data they have on child progress in their classroom. They include the teaching team, they include a coach, a manager, a site director. It's a time when the teacher comes together and has a conversation with her team and those that support her team, really to reflect on, how are the children in my room? How are they progressing? How are they growing? Who's meeting widely held? Who's not? And what might be the reason? Are they absent? And I think something in the world that we live in now, how is distance learning impacting children's growth and development?
Are we supposed to be able to see a screen right now? Are you sharing a screen, Deb?
Yes, I believe I am.
We can't see it on this.
Oh, you can't see anything?
I was-
Oh, no.
It's not coming up. Thank you.
Okay, let me try again. All righty, here we go. Let's try. Can you see it now?
It's coming up. There it is.
Yep, we see
Okay,
it.
Thanks, Deb.
okay.
Latasha.
I'm glad someone said something. So I wanted to show you the very first slide. When we hear the word data, this is kind of how we all feel. Like, what the heck am I to do with all this data? And I did move into that it's twofold. There are times we need to create systems for data dialogues. And we also need to create a process for this, as well as developing systems for analyzing the data. So what is teacher data dialogue? Basically, it's a conversation that teachers have with their teams and those that support them. It may be a coach, it may be an ed manager, it may be a site director. And it's a time for them to come together as a team to really reflect on, what do we know about the children in my classroom? How are they progressing? What supports do I need from my team to help me support children's path to school readiness? They talk about changes to the environment or changes to the daily routine. And these teacher data dialogues or talks usually happen at the end of every checkpoint season as a way to begin the dialogue before the complete analysis is done by the program. I think many of you out there, I was watching as people were joining, and I know that some of you are already doing this. And this may be something new for some other programs. And this may be a place where we want to dive deeper at another time. Then there's data talks at the site level. And this is where a site manager has a conversation with her team or his team about, what are the trends across the classrooms? Are certain classrooms showing more growth than other classrooms, and what might be the reason? And 9 times out of 10, if you look at attendance, that may be the culprit. And so this conversation then leads you to think about, well, what do we need to do to ensure that the children in this room attend? It also, the conversation may focus on, does the focus of teacher planning need to change? Are we focusing too much on literacy and not enough on the other areas of development and content learning? One of the things in the winter report for the department was, math is still not where it should be. And why is that? And what conversations have we had to put in the supports to ensure that children are school ready as it relates to math? But also the other area was social emotional as well. So it's not just academic that we focus on. It is also the areas of development and learning. Then at the program level, the program director pulls together her team or his team to look at what are program-wide trends. So you can see how these conversations is a bottom to the top. It starts with teacher dialogue to site dialogue to the program dialogue, so that the entire program is supporting the development of children in all areas. And we're making sure that they're ready for school. Any questions about the data talks? Is there anyone out there in that large virtual world that is currently doing this? If you are, if you could just raise your hand and let us know if you are. Is anyone out there having conversations, the data talks? Anyone out there? Just use the reaction
Sharon,
button.
this is
Yes.
Tom. Hi, Sharon
Hi.
raised her hand. Can you unmute Sharon?
Oh,
There you
sure.
go.
Hi, how are you? Well, I just raised my hand. Deb asked us to raise our hands if we were having these data talks.
And are you?
Yes, we are.
Could you share a little bit about your successes, maybe some challenges with them?
Yes, sure. Our successes are that we've been able to take a deep dive during this pandemic, believe it or not. It's given us an opportunity to take a closer look at how we could use teaching strategies a bit better. So we do have dialogue. We have a lot of conversation at the teacher level. The teachers meet as teams, the lead teachers meet, they discuss curriculum, map out the plan. We've been instrumental in getting information out to parents on a weekly basis. The challenge is really just documenting the data, which has always been the challenge. It's not that the work isn't happening, but it's just having the time to document all of the work that's happening. So
I think you hit on some at that time. Boy, if we could find the time to do everything we needed, it would be wonderful.
So we're taking a look at that now to see what we can do internally to streamline a lot of the work. You know, there's a lot of busy work in Head Start, you know, a lot of paper and I call it busy work. It's important work, but it's not work that's related to evaluating and analyzing what we're doing for the children. So we're looking at that now to see what we can do to automate some of that busy work. We're reviewing duplication and replication. There might be some things, you know, that we're doing 3 or 4 times or different ways in different areas that we can trim for the staff so that they can spend more time, you know, observing and then documenting what they see, documenting what's going on. We realize that documentation is so key in helping us know what the next step should be, because they can't remember everything.
All of our work is so dependent upon teacher observation of children and their reflection on that, because that informs the planning, and then that gets reflected in our child assessment data. And without child observation and reflection and assessment, we don't have a roadmap. So thank you for sharing that. That is key. So when we think about the data dialogues, that is one process and system to begin to think about in order to ensure that children are progressing and on a path to school readiness. But Head Start identifies 4 data activities that there really needs to be a system and procedure for. And the 4 activities are: 1, you need to prepare. You just don't go in and generate a child outcome report and say, I'm done, because that's not going to work for you. It doesn't really tell you anything. Before you even begin to pull any type of data set, think about the questions that you want answered. And then identify what reports you're going to need to answer those questions. I know very often when people first start using Gull, they go in and they see all these reports and they pull all of the reports at one time, and it's mind-boggling. Each of the reports in Gold are designed for a particular reason and to answer a particular question or questions. So it's really important during that preparing part of the system is to think about what questions and what data am I going to need. Also, who's going to collect that data? When we think about the data conversations we're going to have at the program level, who's going to bring health data? Who's going to bring attendance or some of the COPA reports that you may need? So it's really who's going to collect it and how are they going to present it? Then you aggregate and analyze all of these different data sets and you create a story about, it's a narrative. It's about how your program has supported children's development and learning either during a particular checkpoint or the past 2 checkpoints or over the past year. And then you use and share that data. But knowing, preparing, what do you want to know? What are those critical assessment questions related to child assessment data? I know spring checkpoint is right around the corner. Feels like we just got done with winter. But think for a minute. What questions do you want answered or you want answers to when you're pulling your spring data? Use the chat box to enter what one of your questions might be for the spring checkpoint. What would be one of those critical questions related to child assessment data that you would want to know about at the spring checkpoint? Tom, are people typing in the chat box?
Yeah, this is Tom. Yeah, we see people typing in for, let's see. Where are the gaps? How do we resolve the gaps? For PI, family retention rates. These information are relevant to all TSG, TS Gold, CC users, regardless of funding sources. Are children ready for kindergarten? The difference between remote children data versus in-person?
Awesome. So the first step before you even begin pulling data is identifying those questions as a program and then filtering those questions down so that at each level, they know what lens they're looking for and what data to actually begin to pull. So during the prepare stage, not only do you create those questions, but you're thinking about all of the other different data sets. It's not just child assessment data. Many of you are currently using Ready Rosie as a parent engagement. There are reports that you can pull that can be part of your analysis. Fidelity, if you've been able to conduct any Fidelity observations, what information are you getting from Fidelity, class, ERS, and from COPA, as well as your community needs assessment. What's happening in the community that might be impacting children's development and learning in our program? Sometimes we work in silos where we're only looking at child assessment data in isolation. But once you pull that data and you begin to look at it, you're like, why is this classroom progressing more in math than this classroom? And maybe if you looked at the Fidelity or at class scores or ERS scores, it would provide you the information you need. Maybe the room is not set up for math. Maybe there's not enough materials. So having the right collection of data sets is important. So knowing which reports to pull is critical. And on the slide, I've identified for the fall, the snapshot, gold readiness, and comparative for widely held are all reports that one may want to think about in the fall, as well as other reports that will help you reflect on and analyze your child assessment data. In the winter, the comparative report for widely held is awesome, as well as the gold readiness and the growth report. I love the growth report because so many of our children come to us not meeting widely held in the fall, that they are so far behind, they may never reach widely held expectations, but they have grown so much. They have moved so many different levels. So not only looking at how children, whether children are meeting widely held expectations or not, it's so important for us to look at growth and celebrate the growth of children in our program. And again, using the other data sets to support your analysis and help with your reflection. Then you collect the data. One thing to ensure that the data is, the turnaround is fast, we want to ensure that our team, we've identified for them who's responsible for what data and how to come prepared to talk about it. And we want the turnaround to be quick, to inform in real time. There's nothing worse than getting a report 2 months after the checkpoint is over, because that was such a delay. So aggregate and analyze, and this is my favorite part of looking at data. We aggregate data to get the big picture. And then we make some conclusions based on that. We're looking at trends and patterns. And then we disaggregate the data. We begin to drill down and take the data apart to get the real story. And what I mean by that is when I did the report for the department on the winter, it was apparent that the children in the 1 to 2 year old age group for physical was stagnant. They weren't moving. They didn't move from fall to winter. Now, I wasn't able to drill down, but if you're pulling data at the program level and you see that, you would begin to drill down. Where is that happening? Which classroom or which site? What are the children's birth dates? And you would look at other data sets as well to really give you a story as to why that percentage, why that age group stayed the same. And based on this, you do create next steps. So different ways to disaggregate the data is, and this is not to stereotype, but boys versus girls. One of the things I do for the department is I pull the reports and I include just boys. And then I pull another report that's just girls. And the reason why the city has me doing that is because there is a lot of research that shows the impact of early childhood education on both boys and girls. And one of the things that's really starting to come out is that girls begin to outperform boys by the time they're leaving our programs. Boys aren't progressing as fast as girls. And one of the things we began to really look at is teaching styles. And we began to provide training for teachers because different teaching styles we know have an impact on how girls learn and how boys learn. If you have a teacher who loves to sit at a table and do art, and she has a room full of boys, that may not go over too big. Having 2 boys, well, grown men now of my own, they were so physical about their learning. And looking at the data, it helps us identify where some teachers may need support in their approaches to working with boys and with girls. And how do you plan? One of the other ways to drill down your data is really to compare different program options. Do you have early Head Start and Head Start? Do you have home base? Do you have home visiting? And I think the other option all of us need to really take a close look at, especially in the world we're living in now, how are children progressing and learning in a distance learning remote setting versus an in-person? And that's another way to look at your data and disaggregate it. Look at different age groups, dual language learners. You could even add to this, maybe you want to just run a report on children who have IEPs in your program. Maybe you have a high percentage of children in your program who have IEPs. You could pull a report just on that. What are some ways that some of you have drilled down and disaggregated your data? If you could use the chat box. You could use the chat box and identify some ways that you have pulled your data apart. Age groups, yes.
Age groups. Mhm.
Think about your winter report. Did you pull it on all of the children? Also program options by classroom, program model, sites. Per agency and classrooms.
By child. Mhm.
Okay. So as you approach your spring data, go back to the preparing part and think about some questions that may relate to how you can pull your data apart to get a deeper picture of how different groups are learning. Any questions? So then we come to the point where you're going to analyze all of these percentages and numbers, and you're going to put together a story. It's not just about representing the data in the reports that you pull. It's about creating a story. What have you learned? It's maybe saying, I believe the data suggests that. And are there any unanswered questions? What questions got answered and what new questions cropped up? And what is your program going to do to ensure continuous growth and next steps? It's a story. Are children making progress? You talk about what areas. You talk about areas that you may need to focus on moving forward. How are classrooms and sites demonstrating progress and growth, and why? Are certain program options demonstrating more progress and growth than others? If so, why? And what other information will add to your story? We know attendance impacts not only child attendance, but also staff turnover and staff absenteeism. And then we use and share the data. We present the data in graphical to provide information in a user-friendly way. We provide demographic information. We talk about the reports we've used, and there's that ever important story, that narrative that you create, that identifies systematic solutions for those identified issues or concerns or challenges, and how you're going to move forward. And then you're going to share the data. And I always say, know your audience. The data that you're going to share and discuss with staff is going to be presented differently than the data and how you share it with a parent body or families or your board of directors. Questions? I just want to end with that we use child assessment data in conjunction with other data sets to develop our story. But our story cannot start unless we identify what are our questions, what do we want answered. And based on the story we create, it's a plan so that we can ensure children continued growth and development and readiness for school. So this was a really high-level overview of systems to begin to think about and create in supporting each of you and your programs in putting together your story. So Rachel?
Thanks, Deb. Thanks, everybody. I've been trying to mind the chat as we've been going through. And I did respond once. You guys have put some great questions in the chat about all of this. And, you know, what we're saying, again, both of us, Deb and I, it's your story, and it's your story to tell. When you're gathering your information and you're trying to assess and trying to make some determinants about what else is needed at your site level, at your classroom level, it's multiple data points that you should be looking at. You should be thinking about your teachers. You should be thinking about the professional development that you've done. You should be thinking about holistically all the varying pieces of what's going on in your organization. And as Deb said, even thinking about your community. One of the things we know, for example, through COVID, some of our communities have been harder hit than others. And as a result of that, there going to be some impact there. So when you're telling your story and you look at some of that community impact, is that showing up in your data as well? It may very well be. And then what we're talking about is how do we plan forward on the other side? What kinds of things do we need to do for those children, those families, your staff, in order to ensure that everybody has staff wellness and child wellness and family wellness, which is what I pointed to earlier. One of the things we know, and I know one of the questions in the chat or conversations is about the fact that, you know, when are we saying they're kindergarten ready? What is kindergarten ready? One of the things we know is when our children leave us, for example, and they go off to, for CPS, to a kindergarten program, there's a separate assessment that's done. It's the kids assessment. And we want everybody to understand that kids assessment as well. We spent some time with it before. We're going to go back and we're going to spend some time with it again, because you need to understand the intersection between those two. Again, as we're doing our work on this side, we're thinking City of Chicago. We're thinking how we, DFSS classrooms and groups of children, feed directly into the CPS system. And what does that mean for children in their growth and development by age 2 or grade 2 or 3? That's how we've been looking at this. And this is what we've been talking about. And so the first thing, though, again, and that's why I wanted to pull back a little bit and say, let's look at it at the agency level. How are you using your data? And how do you tell your story? If you had to put a book together for your board of directors right now about your children that you've had in your program, say for 2 years, what data sets are you going to look at? Looking at your teachers, what has been your teacher turnover rate? How many of your teachers has gained degrees and or credentials? What have your class scores told you? If, you know, I know that we have not done all of our ITERs and ECRs. We had done some. We're going to get back and do some more. But what does that tell you about your classroom environments? Then we're talking about the children and what impacts can you see? I see your hand up, Deb, so go ahead.
I'm just thinking, when you mentioned what is school readiness, I would love to spend another one of these meetings just identifying what is school readiness? What does it mean? And how do you identify that in a report?
Absolutely.
And how does gold align to the kids,
Absolutely.
which is the kindergarten entry assessment for CPS?
Absolutely. And we're going to welcome you back. Don't worry.
I ain't worried.
We've got a lot of work that we want to do because we want everybody to have the same information, and we want you to understand all these varying sources and what other people are looking at and what does that mean. Questions are coming in from leaders who like to access this recording at a later date. Yes, after we get through with this meeting, as we do all of them, it goes up on our YouTube site. Tom has to work with it in order to build it into the package that is able to go up on that site. So it's never instant. It is after he's had an opportunity to work with the recording in order to get it up there. So it will be shared. I would say, look, not today, give him a chance to do it. He'll be working on it later this afternoon. So it will be shared on the website, and you will have access to the slides that Deb has shown and also the recording. But again, this isn't a one and done. Neither is working with children a one and done. This is us working together to make sure that we're all on the same page. And when we're thinking about children's growth and development, we need to all be speaking the same language and talking the same so that we understand. One of the things that I need here on my seat is to understand what needs there might be for any of you, so that as we're planning forward, Latasha and her team through Quality, if we're looking at planning, trainings and all of those things, we need to be responsive to you. We need to understand what those needs are. That's what we're trying to do here. There will be, this isn't just a one conversation. We will be doing more work together around these same topics because again, everybody's looking at our data. And so I'm going to end with this because I know we also have another presentation from CPS. But everybody's looking at our data. Everybody wants to know from the mayor's office across the city of Chicago, how are children doing? We want to all be looking at children in some of the same light and understanding what everybody is looking at when they're looking at them. And so that's the work that we have to do here. We'll be looking at building some dashboards to help us better understand when we look at a site or we look at a agency, what are all those data sets and what does that all look like when you put it together in a frame such as a dashboard. And so that's some of the work that we're doing here at DFSS. But again, I just remind everybody, we're here to support you. We will be doing more of these. We needed to move to the Zoom tool so that we can do some interactive pieces. And Deb has a little bit more capability than that. I'm not going to claim it here. It won't be me that can necessarily get us into Menti and all those other things. But one of the things that we want to do is move forward and do a little bit more interaction between us and you. And we have your questions that came up in the chat. Great questions. One of the responses I gave is we will be using some of your questions to help us frame topics and some of the agenda items that we'll be talking about later. But, you know, to Deb's point, yes, we need to go in and we need to dive into what is kindergarten ready. And we need to talk about the crosswalk between the teaching strategies goal and that kids assessment so you can better understand that. And so that is work that we will also do in this environment. I am seriously hoping that we get to a point sometime soon and we can all be in the same room, but we're not there yet. We can't wait on this work. That's why we're starting now in this medium. But we have a lot more work that we'll be doing, a lot more discussions, and there'll be opportunities for people to chime in and other ways to work with us through this. So again, thank you everyone for being here, for your conversation through the chat, for chiming in and participating in this particular medium. Again, Deb and I will be back again, more Deb than me because she's been working with this a whole lot longer than I have. But we'll be back again to talk more about this specific agenda item about outcomes, because again, this is about us framing our work and then having an ability to sit in a room together. And if I had a book and had everybody sign it and then say at the topic of this book is our children are ready to be challenged in a kindergarten environment, I want everybody to feel comfortable and competent in signing off on that. And that's where we're trying to go. And that's what this work is all about. I've got one in here that says maybe creating an agency a training with different components, not just education, since we need to look at data, not just teaching strategies goal, so we can analyze data better. Absolutely, Jacqueline. Thanks for adding that. We do have to look at more than just one data set, and that's why we were talking about that today. We tend to go in one direction, but there are multiple pieces of information that we should be looking at when we start talking about our children and outcomes. And so those are the kinds of things we'll be diving into more. So thank you for that. Again, I thank you, Deb, for spending time with us. And again, we'll be welcoming you back again to continue this discussion. We do have CPS with us this afternoon, and we want to give them an opportunity to talk to us about what's going on in our sister agency out there. So I'm going to turn this back to Tom so that we can get their slides up and they can begin their presentation. So thanks again, Deb.
Okay, so thanks so much to Rachel, and it was great to see Deb Zapalik. It's been a while, but great to be here and really excited to have a chance to talk about what's happening at CPS. I recognize, I think, most of the names on the participant list, but for those I haven't met, I'm Brian Stokes, Chief Early Childhood at CPS, and I'm joined, I'll give Leslie a chance to introduce herself as well.
Thank you, Brian. Leslie McKinley, I see a lot of familiar faces as well. Deputy Chief Officer with the Office of Early Childhood. So happy to be here today.
All right, so we just wanted a quick opportunity to update you on what's happening in CPS. We're really committed to partnering with all of our CBOs. We partner closely with DFSS, the Mayor's Office, and kind of managing Chicago early learning and leading our collective work. So Leslie will start us off, and then I'll join, and we'll have some time for questions at the end.
Great, thanks, Brian. Next slide, please. So all of the work within our office is grounded in our district's 5-year vision. So as we think about the work under UPK expansion, it falls under the early childhood vision goals. And the goals within the early childhood piece of the 5-year vision is really centered around increasing kindergarten readiness, and also ensuring that our students by the end of grade 2 are at 65% or higher in attainment in math and reading. Next slide. And so this slide really highlights, it gives you a snapshot of what we look like as a district. I'll first walk through 2019, 2020, and then we'll take a look at 2020, 2021 school year. So 2019, 2020, we had about 17,000 students enrolled. And that's generally what we see as we've increased full day seats across the district. Historically, it was a little bit higher. We averaged around 21 or something like that, 1,000 students. But as you'll see here, we are in 363 elementary schools. On 20th day, we had a little over 80% of our seats full in half and full day. One of the things that I want to highlight, because it really will speak to our work under UPK expansion, is that 59% of all pre-K students transitioned into the same school in kindergarten. That's a really low number, and that's something that we really want to address through this UPK expansion. And that's looking at students that either left the district as well. But when we look at only students who stayed, it rises a little bit to 68%, but we're still not seeing a lot of that pre-K to K transition in schools like buildings like we would like to see. Next slide. And so when we look at our numbers this year for 2020, 2021, we see that COVID has really impacted our enrollment. You see that our enrollment now is 11, as of 20th day, was like 11,494, a significant drop. Also, we did see also a drop in our EL population as well. So those will be two areas that as we move on under UPK expansion that we will focus and on improving within our strategic plan. Next slide. So when we think about UPK expansion, this is a slide that I'm sure if you've been to any of our community meetings, or when board member Melendez had her community engagement centered around early childhood, you will see this slide. And I know Saretha and Tiffany attended a lot of our in-person district events where we highlighted that UPK expansion is not only about CPS, it is a citywide initiative, and that's why you see all the logos represented. So what we're striving to do as a city is build a system where all 4-year-olds will have an opportunity to have that full day experience, whether it's within a CPS building or within a community-based organization. That's our overall vision goal for the city. In CPS, we're prioritizing full day for 4-year-olds. So we're ensuring that those families that want a full day experience in the district, we're expanding seats to be able to do so, with the understanding that full 4-year-olds will still be served in a community-based organization. To do that, we've had to make some shifts to our half-day population. Previous years, we were primarily half-day, so all of our 15, 16,000 seats were half-day. Well, we significantly dropped that as we expanded pre-K. Right now, we have about 4,500 half-day seats in the district. So, you know, making way again for that full day 4-year-old prioritized population. In the city of Chicago, we're lucky to have this mixed delivery system. We know that as part of this vision that, you know, the district will serve primarily 4-year-olds.
I had a quick question.
Need for
that looks good.
partners to work with us. And
I apologize, Leslie. I'm asking everyone to mute, please. Go ahead, Leslie. I'm sorry.
Leslie, you're muted.
Can you hear me?
Yep, now I can. Thank you.
Great. So I'm not for sure where I left off, but I will start with just reiterating that this is a collaborative event initiative, just really in the district, we're striving for 4-year-olds, prioritization for families. We understand that within this mixed delivery model, that CBOs will play an important role with doing things that we can't do within CPS, which is provide that wraparound care and services to families, and really prioritizing this seamless birth to 3-year-old experience. Next slide. And so I highlighted a little bit of this on the slide already. Like I said, we will continue to serve 4-year-olds. We know that community-based organizations will still serve about 4,000 4-year-old students in full day, really highlighting that we really need the partnership with this group to really serve the extended, birth to 3 continuum. But within the next slide, I'll talk a little bit about the vision for UPK, and it is centered around a birth to 12 component. Again, CBOs are needed and necessary to provide that wraparound care and be that extended support for families. Next slide.
Okay, yes, here you go.
So when we think about UPK expansion and how we've gotten here, we took a multi-year approach to it. We started with schools that had existing programs, but also had space within their schools for expansion. In 1920, we did a lot of conversions and add-ons still in our targeted highest need communities. As we move to 2021, where we are now, it's shifting a little bit. So now we've ensured that community areas and schools where there was space, where there was need, we met that need. And so now we're moving to targeted community areas where there's moderate space. So now there's opportunity for us to build and truly expand the footprint of full day in some of our areas where they are tight for space or have very little space for expansion. And then as we get into 21, 22, that even tightens it. So we move to areas where like the northwest side of the city where there's little space in buildings for expansion. It's pretty much going to be all building and lease spaces. And what this map highlights is our approach over the years. And so you'll see that as we're in 21-22, we're really centered for the top northwest sides of the city. If you could go ahead and click through, please, for me. So this is the vision for UPK that we've been sharing across the district. And it's really what I've said at the top of our slides, that we want every 4-year-old to have access, not only within our space, but within our CBOs as well. And we're striving as a city to build this birth through 12 continuum, ensuring that there are strong community partnerships. So what these numbers represent, and you can go ahead and click again. What these numbers represent is our goal within the city is to have 18,180 full day seats for 4-year-olds in the district. Where we are now is we have 16,020 seats. So we still need to build another 2,160 full day seats. And that'll be evidence in the slides as we go through. Again, this still keeps in mind that we're depending on our community partners to still service those additional 4,000 seats within your agencies. So this has been, this slide highlights how, you can go ahead and click through again. This slide really highlights our work in progress, and it shows where we were in school year 17-18. If you can believe it, we only had 378 full day seats. And over the past couple of years, since 2017-18, we filled 150% gap with full day seats across the district. So we're really proud about that. And there's still a 14% gap that we need to fill. So we're looking in the next year or so to identify space for another 109 classroom gap, which will bring us to our goal of that 18,000 seat capacity that we just talked about on the previous slide. Next slide. And this is just another look of how we've expanded throughout the years. And it shows where we are with our full day gen ed and blended numbers. I will now turn it over to Brian to talk through our path forward and how we hope to collaborate with you in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Leslie. Thomas, if you go to the next slide. So I know we're sharing a lot of data, and so as Rachel mentioned, this will all be available on the deck, and we're happy to come back to future EDPD meetings, address any other topics, and really just continue to engage and partner. So this breaks down a little bit on the left here, that 109 classrooms that Leslie mentioned, where they are. And on the right, I think there have been a lot of questions about, where are we and what have we done so far? And so, we're still playing around with the colors of this to make it a clearer map, but everywhere that's, that light, kind of those two lighter blue colors, that's where we actually are at full universal capacity. And so I think there have been some questions about, why are we not expanding in certain communities, or why are we expanding in communities that are higher resourced? And, as Leslie mentioned, we have been expanding intentionally in communities across the city over the past 3 years. And so looking at these two lighter blue communities, we can actually, at this point, between CPS and CBOs, serve every 4-year-old who wants a full day, high quality seat in those communities. And so, I think, just to make clear where we are and what our plans are, we do not at this point then intend to add classrooms in those lighter two blue communities. I think we're going to continue to monitor data and make sure that there are enough seats as demographics change. But we're actually pretty close to our goal. And I don't know that we've, shared that picture before or shared that message of where we're already at, that most of the city is already at universal capacity. Next slide. And if you can click through, we need to get rid of all the animations in this thing. I keep forgetting to do that. So, this gives you another sense of where we are. So, we've expanded access by 96%. We're continuing to work on, I think, application and verification barriers. So Leslie mentioned that our focus on trying to improve same school transitions. Ultimately, what we want is, for students who start pre-K in CPS, that the vast majority of those students, ideally, high 90%, are starting pre-K at the school where they are likely and entitled to attend K. Some families are still going to, choose a different school for K, and that's fine. But we want the vast majority of students to begin school at their elementary school, so that we have, principals able to build a school culture that starts at pre-K, family relationships that start at pre-K, and to really see pre-K as part of their school. I think the next part of that is continuing, for us to continue to work closely with DFSS and with the CBO community, so that we're also building strong and seamless transitions from pre-K and a CBO into K. And Sarethel mentioned the kids tool, and of course that's a part of that in terms of making sure that we're aligned around the use of kids, that all of you are familiar with kids, and that we're starting to talk about kids data within communities. And then we're also, I think, at the same time looking at enrollment policies and partnering with DFSS to evaluate our current application system and make sure that we have an application system that is family friendly and provides ease of use. Next slide. And so this gives a sense of some of the thoughts we have around some opportunities for collaboration. Right now we're familiar with some pre-K to K transition projects being funded by the Governor's Office for Early Childhood Development in Austin and Altgeld. And so we're partnering with those, and we're really eager to partner with any other community level pre-K to K transition projects. We're in active communication with DFSS around opportunities for shared professional development, shared learning. I really appreciated the kind of the learning series that Sarethel and Deb launched here. And so, we're really eager to find ways for ongoing shared PD. We're eager to be a part of and support any community collaboration. So I know that we've got members of our team, our family engagement coordinators, who are embedded in every elementary school network around the city. And so I know they're taking part in, the Austin Altgeld partnerships I mentioned, the Little Village Education Collaborative, the North Lawndale Education Collaborative. But if there are other community collaborations or other ways that we can better strengthen collaborations in your community, we would love to hear about those. And we'd love to hear about any other ideas for ways that we can improve our partnership as a district with all of you as CBOs and with your communities. I think one of the reasons that Leslie and I wanted to make sure that we were here at this meeting and wanted to start joining at whatever frequency makes sense, is just to build that bridge and to continue that partnership. Obviously, with the consolidation a few years ago, which I think was an incredibly positive move for us to consolidate how funding works. But I think that it does mean that we have to work harder to make sure that we still have a positive relationship between CPS, the district, and all of the CBOs. So our main OECE mailbox is here, but I think when the deck goes out, if Thomas can include the emails for Leslie and me, we're happy to be in touch as well. And then I think I have 2 more slides, I think. Thomas, if you can advance. So all of you have seen this, I'm sure. So we're really excited about the application launching April 21st. And as Sarethel mentioned, we have that citywide goal of 20,000 applications or more. We know that we have to reverse the trend of the past year. And we have to make sure that every family, especially our families in our priority populations, are aware of and eager about and engaged in our application process. And then my last slide, and then we'll shift to questions. Sarethel and Tiffany asked us to highlight this, and my little red circle apparently moved at some point here. That was supposed to be around the 30. CPS, I'm sure many of you have heard, CPS did move the start of school for the first time in many years to before Labor Day. And so for the SY21-22 year, to address learning loss and just to make sure that high schoolers have ample instructional time before assessments, August 30th will be the start of school for SY21-22. So imagine the red circle has moved down a few rows there. So you can go to my last slide, and then we're happy to answer any questions. I think there's one that's come in the chat. Again, our contact info for our office is here. Our team is really responsive to that, but you can also reach out to Leslie and me directly as well. So happy to answer any questions. And I see one from Cindy. So if CPS is a wait list, what is the process to share with CBO so we can fill the gap and provide services? So, we have, in partnership with DFSS, a common hotline vendor, Illinois Action for Children, who manages the hotline and engages with families. One thing we're changing this year is that we have noticed that although we've dedicated the vast majority of our seats to 4-year-olds, we still have 3-year-olds who are sitting on wait lists for CPS schools. And so we've updated our language this year around the application to really clarify for families that we are not accepting 3-year-olds in our full day seats. Families are going to see, I think, a pop-up message this year about that. And then our team in CPS and the team in Action will actively, proactively call those families to get them off of the CPS waitlist to CBOs. I don't think we're at this point able to directly share family information because families would have to choose the CBO they were interested in. But we intend to be much more proactive this year about that in terms of, we don't want a waiting list. That doesn't serve anybody. Right. We want every family in a seat that's open to them as soon as possible.
And the only thing I want to add, Brian, is that there will be stronger language on the CEL website as well. So we will definitely ensure that families are well informed, and we're also sharing the information with schools to partner with their local CBO to ensure that families that do come, that are 3-year-old, that are looking for a space, that they have that information as well.
Any other questions or anything else we can answer or should talk about? Again, this won't be the last time that we're here, and we want this to be an ongoing conversation.
Thanks to both Leslie and
Thank
Brian
you
for being here. Christina, right now I don't see any others right now in the chat. If anything else comes up, we'll let you know, and we can send those questions out to be responded to later. And we can get that out in our CSD update if needed. So thanks to both of you. Christina?
Thank you, Sarethel. So I'm gonna talk briefly about the recruitment campaign for 2021. As several people mentioned already, we are up against quite a bit of hurdles because of COVID and just trying to understand the landscape. Tom, can you move forward to the next slide? You can move to the next one as well. So we do have some unique challenges. There is still a lot of, residual, hurdles because of COVID-19, but we are equipped with the lessons that we learned in 2020, and we are integrating some new marketing strategies to help us meet our target audiences where they gather. So contactless canvassing, digital spaces, we have a lot of new insights to implement a strong campaign for 2021. Next slide, please. So our approach is both strategic and agile to meet parents where they gather. So we have a plan, but we are also able to adapt, adjust, and move things around as needed. So our aim will be to ensure that families who need programs most have an easier time applying for it. So our goals are to ensure that families receive clear, consistent information on the value of early childhood and the safety measures CEL programs have in place to prevent the spread of COVID, timely information about how to apply, and the policies that affect enrollment, reliable access to application support. We are equipping outreach teams with the ability to provide more outreach support on the ground, more application support on the ground. So we have a multi-tiered approach. We're working with grassroots partners. We also have grass tops partners, paid advertising, and boots on the ground to identify hard to reach communities. Next slide. So these are our target communities. These are the communities that, of course, we are targeting the entire city. Let me say that first and foremost. We are targeting every community in the city, but these are the communities that have showed historical under-enrollment and have showed historical issues with enrollment. So the communities with the asterisk are those that also have been hit the hardest by COVID. So we understand that in those communities, we're going to have to integrate some additional strategies and support to support those communities with the issues that they're facing. Next slide. So agency supports. So we are providing to the agencies, to you all, custom materials as we have in the past. But I will say that this year we've gotten a much early start. We already have 199 sites have signed up to receive their custom materials. Those custom materials are already in production and slated to be delivered in May. End of May, they will be delivered. So we are, providing banners, posters, flyers, and door hangers in Spanish and English and other languages as you have requested. Another agency support is application training. Vera Creative is offering weekly application training that you could send your staff to, that you could send community partners to. If there's somebody in your community that says, how can I help you? How can we partner? Send them to this training. They will learn about the application and how to walk families through the application. This training is intended for community leaders to be able to walk families through the application and answer questions as they arise during the application process. Next slide. So citywide, we have a pretty robust campaign. We are moving forward with paid media. We have learned a lot in 2020 because of COVID. We realized less people are taking public transportation. So we're reallocating those dollars to some of the places that we know people are gathering. So one of the new things that we're doing this year is billboards. When you see a billboard, I know that doesn't sound like a new thing, but the new component is that when you see a Chicago Early Learning billboard, there is also a mechanism that you will be served the ad on your phone. So if you pass by that billboard in a few minutes, then you'll see the ad on your phone. And that is an opportunity to have multiple touch points and reinforce the message. There's this a rule in marketing that you have to see something 7 times before you take action. And now 7 is not a magic number, but that just goes to show that it takes multiple times of message reinforcement before a family is able to take action. So we are doing some radio, digital radio as well. There's a lot of streaming music that we are plugging into the billboards with the in-app ads that I just reference. CTA is still going to be targeted, a lot of digital. So we are able to target geographically. So in those high need communities, and also we're also able to geofence around parks and libraries or places that we know parents of young children gather, grocery stores on Saturday mornings. So we are able to geofence and also hone in on a demographic. So we are doing that. Social media, we're already active on social media. If you don't already follow us, please do at Chicago Early Learning on Instagram and Facebook. We're posting lots of great highlights there. We're highlighting communities, we're highlighting your agencies. So social media, we're doing both organic social media. We're entering all these mom groups where moms are talking about what they're doing with their kids, are preschool safe, all those kinds of conversations. And then we're also doing paid social media where we are boosting posts and running ads through social media, also hyper-targeted. E-blast, we have an email distribution list, I think at this point of about 34,000 names. We blasted out those 3-year-olds on the waiting list that I heard you talking about. I heard Brian and Leslie talking about those emails. We do receive those in order to blast out information about community-based opportunities. So we are blasting out information about application to over 34,000 individuals. Also community print, those local publications like La Raza, Lawndale News, Austin Weekly. People still read those, and they also do have a digital component as well. So we are thinking about high level all the way down to grassroots level with our citywide paid media. Next slide. So citywide outreach is also, we're already active. Our teams are actually out there today. We have learned a lot in 2020 where we've learned contactless outreach, contactless canvassing. Our teams are out. They're definitely protected, keeping that 6 feet rule in place and giving out materials. So our plan this year is to focus on forming deeper relationships with families and community partners. So we're taking more of a community organizing approach where we have tools where we can gather qualitative information. So while we're out in the communities, we're going to be gathering information that helps us understand why people do or do not register, what are some of those barriers they're facing, so that it could help us continue to refine our messaging. What we're hearing from the field will feed back into our messaging, we'll adjust our social media, we'll adjust our FAQs, we'll adjust the hotline teams to make sure that what we're saying across the board, across the city is in direct response to what we're hearing from our outreach teams. And then the other new thing we learned through focus groups is that due to COVID-19, a lot of low-income families, especially immigrant refugee families, use WhatsApp a lot to communicate with families. So that's something new this year that we're tapping into. WhatsApp, you can broadcast. There are a lot of organizations that do broadcast to low-income migrant populations, Black and brown communities, and they have sometimes like 500 people watching their broadcasts. So we are plugging in to these broadcasts to our target demographics. Next slide. So new in 2021 is enhanced data collection. I mentioned this earlier. While we're out canvassing, we're also collecting information. We're collecting information that will feed back into our strategy. We will aggregate the data, share it with the city on a bi-weekly basis, and be responsive to what we're hearing in the community. So this data-driven approach will offer more insights. So we're going to combine the quantitative data that we've always provided, how many doors are knocked on, how many families we connect with, how many events we attend, and also add to that the qualitative data that will help us understand what's happening in the communities. So we're going to have a broader reach. So we'll broaden our reach in 2021 by increasing the touch points with the family. So we're going to increase the touch points by taking part in regular video conferences such as Facebook Live events that have become very common during the pandemic. That's one thing that we found during our focus groups is that most families have become very comfortable using digital communication sources, even across income levels. They are on Facebook Lives, they are doing Zooms with families, WhatsApps with families, those sorts of things. So we are going to plug into some of these digital platforms. These events are frequent and they attract large number of attendees in some cases. So we're also going to expand onto, as I mentioned, WhatsApp and other platforms that some of the hard to reach communities prefer. Next slide. I'm sorry, I know there's some words that are cut off. I think something got messed up in formatting. I apologize for that, but I'm just trying to push through to get us done here. So our messaging direction for 2021, we wanted to keep it simple through our focus groups. You know, in the early childhood industry, we use so many different words, and we don't even realize that they are just jargon at this point. You know, some people say early education, early learning, childcare, Head Start, all these words we use interchangeably and we use throughout the city, but we realize that the word the parents understand the most is preschool. So we have tried to just really keep it simple for parents. They don't need to understand what funding stream, if it's PFA, PI, parents don't care about those details. We understand that language, parents don't. So we are going to focus on the value of preschool and application accessibility. Those are our two primary focuses in our messaging. We're also using the term preschool more broadly. To the public, preschool is the term that's most widely used. We're also going to empower families to know and explore their options. Not, our preschool offerings across the city are not a one size fits all. Different programs are better for different families, and we want families to be empowered to choose the option that works best. Our recruitment is more inclusive to all early learnings from birth to 5. We want to also demystify uncertainties around what Chicago early learning is. And then we also want a balanced emphasis on the collaborative effort of CPS and community-based preschool. Next slide. So some of our key messages is the pre-launch announcement. We have already started really communicating this very widely, that the application is opening April 21st. This is new this year. We have never this far in advance spread the message across the city that the application is opening. We usually let them know like the week before that it's, or the day before, like it's opening tomorrow. We've never done this far in advance, weeks out, letting families know that the application opens April 21st. So this is the key message we've been using. We've been saying it opens April 21st. There are over 600 CPS and community-based preschools across the city. Choose the program that's best for your family. Learn more about applying, visit or call, website, phone number. One thing that worked really well last year was because of COVID-19 and the lack of accessibility to apply in person is the hotline. People were very grateful that they were able to call the hotline and complete an application on the hotline. So we're definitely going to continue to push that. Next slide, please. So also new this year's updated safety messaging. We're going to talk more about the safety of our programs using this messaging, saying safety, and this messaging will go out in our e-blasts and social media. So safer classrooms for all early learners. There's safe in-person early learning options available for every 0 to 5-year-old in Chicago. Both CPS and community-based preschool programs take daily precautions to protect the health of their students and their families. Face masks provided, increased safety and sanitation, enhanced cleaning protocols, daily health screenings, smaller class sizes, and more. So the message also is for health and safety guidance. For community-based preschool programs, we want them to contact the site directly. So if they want to know what XYZ Center is, what Mary Crane Center is doing, what El Valor is doing, we want them to call the site directly and ask, what are you doing for updated safety measures in your program? Next slide. That's it for me. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And we have gone over. It is right now 12:13. We have planned the meeting from 10 to noon, but had a lot that we wanted to give. A lot of it was very, very timely. So we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity to spend this time with you. We will be back again with you next month as we're planning our EDPDs on a monthly basis. So we will be working with all of you. We've got the questions. We're going to be working to make sure, for example, that we do the professional development. There was an ask that we do some work with agencies and leadership around data so that you are able to dive in and analyze and do those kinds of things. So we'll be working on some of that. Quite a few great questions, and I've already responded and said what we'll do with some of that is use that to help us with to frame some of our topical discussions as we move forward. But again, this is us again coming to you wanting to make sure that you are up to date on what's going on around you. Really want to thank CPS for being here with us today to talk and you through and everybody to understand the plan with CPS and understanding that this is a joint effort in the city of Chicago around early learning between DFSS, CPS, and the mayor's office as we move forward. We want to make sure that we can work with you to help you understand some of the connections between TSG, or Teaching Strategies Goal, and the kids tool. So we'll be coming back to do some more of that. Also want to thank Christina for being here to talk about the recruitment effort. Again, wanting you to know what we're doing on our side. I do know all of you are marketing and doing things and recruiting yourselves, but we want you to know we're in partnership with you because we want to reach every family we can and get them enrolled in your program, 0 to 5 in CPS schools as well. So we're all working on this. We're all working together to make sure that our families get the support that they need, that they get the access that they need into our programs. But more than anything, it's in support of you. It's in support of children and families. This is what we do every day, and that's why we're here. So I thank you again for spending your time with us today. I thank my team. I thank the fiscal team, Glenn, for his presentation. You know, I just want to thank you for spending time with us today. We've gone over by about 15 minutes. We'll try to adjust next time, or who knows, maybe we'll just extend the next EDPD so that you'll already know that it's going to be a little bit later, based on the information that we need to share. And I recognize it's a lot coming at you all at one time, and I understand giving up a couple of hours is a huge piece for you because of your work. But again, I thank you, I thank you, I thank you. Everyone, please stay safe. Take care of yourselves, take care of everyone at your organizations, yourself and your families, and we'll all talk soon. Thanks again.